Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. Today, well, not really video, of course stream, but today we are going to be continuing with the Road to 2100 series. Last episode, episode 6, we hit 2100, which was amazing. I mean, not 2100, then we would end the series. We hit 2000, which was amazing. And today we're going to try to expand on our success and try to reach maybe 2120 or something of that sort. So if you're new here, I have a playlist on YouTube obviously, but if you're watching on Lichess, then this is the 7th episode of this series where we tried to get into 2100, and we play usually 3 to 4 10 plus 0 games depending on the time it takes, obviously. And without further ado, let's get into today's games. So currently we are playing Diabolic 9900, who is 1946, and we have a bit of time to make our first move. Let's go with our typical e4 stuff, which I usually play anyway. And we get e4, e5. So let's play knight f3. We have knight c6, and I'll go for an Italian. So I like playing the Italian in general. We get this line, so of course here there's the fried liver, which is knight g5, but anyway I prefer kind of just the same opening against both bishop c5 and knight f6, and that's usually what I would recommend. So let's just go d3. Solid move, just protecting the pawns, and we just want a castle in general. I think actually, yeah, in this kind of move order we usually go c3, because against bishop c5 we go c3, but if we go c3 c3 when our opponent goes knight f6, obviously e4 is hanging, so we have to go d3 and c3. So this is the slower, I think it's the Gucci pianissimo. I don't know how to pronounce it, but like that's probably really bad. But so typical kind of things here. So let's just castle, and let's see what our opponent would like to do. Our opponent plays h6, so basically their idea is that if I play h3, they're going to launch with this nice trick g5, and actually they have a pretty easy position. But this doesn't work if you don't play h3. It might seem intimidating, but as we'll see if our opponent actually goes for that, there's not much to be scared of. So now let's think about how we can utilize this advantage. So let's go rook e1 with the idea of d4 and opening up the e file for a rook. Well, turns out they didn't go for this g5 idea. And now h3 is of course safe, preventing bishop to g4. And just in general, just protecting the g4 square, which is a typical idea in this kind of setup. Okay, so we have rook e8, which is again a typical move. So black's idea usually here is to go bishop e6, and they try to go, just try to trade off white's better bishop, because, well, not really better, but in general this bishop is a bit more scary, even though it's not the best bishop, because it's hitting f7, which is the weak pawn in these kind of e4 openings. So I'm just going to go for the typical Italian idea, which is rerouting the knight to g3, where it's basically better positioned, and even sometimes you can hop into f5, which is really rare. I'm not gonna tell you something false, but it is still nice to get once in a while. And even though it's not the best, a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. So you can probably even just do it anyway, if you like really want to anyway. Yeah. Okay, so we have knight e7. This is a similar plan for black. Basically, black is saying that my knight isn't doing much on c6, and it's not, the center is already controlled with c3, so it's also much better placed on the similar g6 square, where it has like the same plans as white, in kind of just a symmetrical position. The horses are grazing on the side of the field, and bishops are just chilling. The really only difference here is that since white has an extra move, we got a c3 in, and if black plays c6, which is not the best move, we gain an advantage. Well, I mean, it's symmetrical. We don't gain an advantage, but the whole point is that now without a6 here, d4 comes in much nicer. And if he doesn't play a6 here, which he basically has to play, or else his bishop will be kicked with tempo, and it won't have such a good score like a7. The point is that now our pawn is defended, so we can actually push. Because before, when our knight was here, for example, if we went for d4, if you calculate a bit, well, I guess it doesn't really matter in this position, but something like this, if you play d4 here, the problem is that takes. So even though the bishop doesn't have a great place, it's just that now your e4 pawn is under attack, and pushing it is not a great idea, I'll just tell you that. So we got knight f4, and this is a suboptimal move here, because usually knight f4 happens when the knight is well defended. It looks like it's well defended, but actually think again. Now d4 comes in more like brutally, because if we disanchor this e5 pawn, the f4 knight will be hanging. So actually black can't even capture here, or the f4 knight will hang. And if we keep this tension, actually, we'll have this chance to push in the center with d5, which isn't great here, but we'll have those opportunities. And anyway, we'll have a closed position, which is generally greater attacking chances. Now this knight is basically a huge target for us, and let's try to exploit it with some quick development. And what I mean by quick development is queen b3. So the idea is that bishop e6, and we can lock the position entirely with d5. And though this might not seem good, and it probably isn't, it's just really scary for black to defend, because white has so much space, and anyway, I can just like take this knight, which isn't the greatest move ever, and I know that, but that's the main piece in black's position currently. And now you'll see this bishop could get targeted too with a4, a5, and we'll win a massive amount of tempi on the bishop, not tempo, because tempo is singular, obviously. I mean, who didn't know tempo is singular? So, seems like black is thinking a bit, and we're about equal on time. Actually, turns out I'm about 11 seconds up. So queen e7, I'm not sure what that does, because it doesn't really threaten the pawn, because you put the queen in front, not the rook. And now it's kind of difficult to find a plan here, because there's no clear path, no yellow brick road here. But there are usually typical guidelines and plans that you can follow. So in this case, there are not a lot of guidelines. We kind of did the typical knight development on the side, which helps us protect this e4 pawn. But right now, let's think about some principles. So we would... Actually, we might have a way to win material. I'll have to check that out later. We would like to attack here, so we'd like to keep the position more closed. So, we won't want to play DE, but maybe something like A4 is a bit better, because we're trying to take advantage of this bishop, and in the future, obviously, D5 might be okay, when this bishop is potentially traded off. But now, notice how the queen is both defending this pawn and the pawn over here. And this is what we call overloading. And if this queen was gone, we would have a fork on f7. So that leads you to this kind of nice tactic here. DE, D takes e5 again. Then knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and then we get the fork here. So we win. It's not the best trade here, but I think, yeah, it's not the best trade. Let's not go for that. Instead, let's just go for a typical a4 plan like we were considering earlier. Since we're not in such a rush here, black isn't threatening anything severe. So let's just, okay, so a5. That seems like a good response, but technically a6 is better since now this b5 square is free. Doesn't really matter much here, just as general advice though. So let's think how to get our rook into the game here. So I think the easiest way would be to play something like d5 and try to bring the rook over here. But the problem is that these knights are kind of blocking the way. So instead, let's bring this knight on h4 over here to f5. And there are some tactics involved here. You have to calculate if something like knight e4 works. But you have rook e4, queen e4, and bishop f4, and the rook on e8 hangs. That's a bit more advanced to see, but it's the kind of things you kind of have to see in this position in order to kind of gain advantage. Might seem scary, but at lower levels, it doesn't really, matter at all. Whether you just, attack with maybe this tactic, or you just do something very random. It doesn't really matter that much at lower levels. So, we're about down 2 minutes, so I'll go a bit faster. Rather than slower. Looks like nobody has joined in on the stream, which is kind of sad, but you know. So I'm just waiting, I guess, which is kind of boring. Because usually when you're done calculating, okay, well, I kind of got cut off, but when you're usually done calculating a move, you don't have to spend your time calculating it 20,000 more times. But here, let's go for knight, so bishop e6, which was a move I expected a while ago, but we see it now, I guess. Let's go for knight f5. And unlike black's knight, our knight is actually threatening the queen and is posing some problems to black. Because, you could say that, oh, my knight's controlling squares, but it's not really doing anything here. It's just there, not doing much. So black seems to be thinking again. We're down about 50 seconds here, so I don't think we have to play that fast. I kind of want to get in time scramble, because I could probably beat this gun bullet, can I? Let's see. Their bullet's about 2200, so I'm not going to risk that, but If we have to get into bullet time scramble, we kind of have to. And since we're in this kind of position, since we're in the middle game, we'll probably see more of these time scrambles unless something major happens, like a blunder. So now I'm kind of imposed to close the position because we're just gaining space here, and even though the bishop looks bad, we can just kind of use all of our other pieces because black's pieces are kind of doing whatever this is. This bishop is just stirring on nothing. This knight is also doing absolutely nothing. The bishop is back on c8. And this knight is arguably not doing anything. And here let's go for... So I don't think acting fast is the best way to continue here, but it probably is because I'm just like 99% the opposite of what Stockfish will say because I don't like to attack that much, but we might have to here shortly. Our knight's great here, but it can be kicked with g6. So probably have to kind of let our knight go here. Since we're running low on the clock a bit, let me just go like bishop d7 and trade off these light squared bishops, since my light squared bishop is technically worse than his, which is always a good strategy, by the way. So we're a bit down on time, but there's some instructive moments here. So now after we trade our light squared bishop, notice that our huge space potential here kind of shines, and we have much easier play than black here. So I can just blitz out some random moves, so black will have a bit of problem coordinating his pieces. So for example, if we go c4 with the idea to kind of just gain space, there's nothing black can do to kind of punish this, even though this is slow. Sure, g6 just hangs the pawn, and that's not great, of course. But the only pawn break here that black has is c6, which just hangs a bishop. And notice how earlier in the game, black should have just played a6, because now he'll have problems coordinating his pieces because he can't move his bishop due to the g6 pawn. So in fact we have knight g6, and that just shows how helpless black is, because yeah. Let's go. I'm inclined to go bishop e3, but I don't want to trade off too many pieces, and we're nearing down 1 minute. So let me just go typical developing move, bishop d2. And maybe queen f3. There's really nothing black can do to punish us again. So black seems to be thinking a bit. Let's just go queen f3. There's literally nothing black can do. Queen d8 is insane. c6. So now see, when black tries to do this kind of stuff, it just doesn't matter here. Since I'm down on time, let me just play some like random moves. And remember to take with the e pawn here, because you don't want the c file to open up. Then it'll give black some counterplay. The only thing you need to be careful of is the c file opening up and black suddenly getting some play over here, which is not what we want. In fact, I could have just taken this bishop, but I can just take it now too. So I don't think that's a great move either, because it just doesn't really do anything. My pieces are fully defended, and c5 is whatever that is. Actually, I might have some neat tactics here with the f6 knight, which I actually do now, and nice deflection tactic. So usually the thing in bullet, I'll just give some tips here because why not, is to just trade as much as you can if you're down on time, because that makes easier play and you don't have to spend less time. And notice we're kind of equalizing on the time here. Even though this is a 2200 bullet player, we just kind of have an easier position to play, because they're just playing out of fate. And I hung pawn, but they didn't see it because it's bullet. But honestly, as a 2200, they should have saw that. No offense. Okay, so let's just attack this pawn over here. Move some random king move. We shouldn't have pre-moved that, and yeah, let's just defend this. Yeah, that might be a problem. Probably a big problem, yeah. Okay, we'll have to sack. Now all we have to do is just not hang mate. Check, check. And I think we're already dead, so, I think there's probably force mate somehow. That was so useless. Okay, let's just defend that. They should just automatically trade here, but yeah, you can also do that. Okay, yeah, it's probably gonna be a loss. Yeah, sadly a loss. Yep, okay. So sadly we're down to 201, but I mean, I named the stream this for a reason. I just predicted that this would happen. Let's get into the next game as black. We have a, let's see, an Italian. So we got this as white earlier. We got an Evans Gambit. So actually I really underrate the Evans Gambit because I just feel like there's this one variation that you'll probably see in a bit that just completely equalizes. I know the main line is just to like, okay, this isn't the line, I completely messed it up, but you know, there's this one line where you get D5 in, and for example, CD, D5, and it's just completely equal. I mean, there's nothing. In fact, I think we can get D5 in here too. And the thing about D5 is that the main thing in the Evans Gambit to worry about is the central pawns here, because they're the most menacing and cause the most sadness, I guess, to your position. So after those pawns are gone, as you can see, there's not much white can do rather than like just throw pieces at you, which you don't have to be worried of. So you just have to be careful to not blunder these kind of simple tactics by getting your queen pinned or something. In this case, you don't even have to worry about that at all, because you can take with the knight and you're just completely fine. So the Evans Gambit may seem intimidating, but you just can simply equalize by taking down white's central pawns with a quick D5. And as we see here, our opponent just blunders the bishop. Queen bishop. Now it might look scary, but they're just trying to justify themselves that their blunder was right. And I know that you, whoever is watching this, you right there, you also try to justify your blunders, but just like resign. Unless you're like 800, then don't resign, then play. But how much? See, a 2100 blunder to bishop. That shows you that you have potential to be 2100 if you're not 2100 already. But we have queen a4. Now the queen is kind of looking at her pieces, but it can't really do anything to us. If we simply back up, there's nothing great about white's position, because their pieces are very discoordinated is the best way to put it, I guess. And let's just trade off. We have to be a bit careful about this. I'm actually not sure if there's any way to avoid that. Yeah, we might have messed up there. There's not really a way to avoid d5, I think. If we just go bishop c5 to kind of prolong this, I guess, maybe. Yeah, and then they just blunder that. I think the 2100 is tilted because, yeah, they just missed bishop e3. I think you had to go instead like rook d1, and then when they attack, just go rook e1. Yeah, and they tried to again justify their blunder by blundering another piece, which doesn't work. Well, actually, they have rook d1 here. I feel like there's some tactics here, but I think the easiest way to just win here is just to not care at all. Don't try to do fancy things because you're up in exchange after you lose the bishop. So it's fine anyway. Let's offer a queen trade so that our queen is out of this pin. And this queen trade is now forced, which is really nice. Because if they avoid the queen trade by like just moving the piece, then if you think about it, there's just bishop takes c4. So like queen b3, there's bishop c4 anyway. And I guess queen b3 is okay, but you gotta trade anyway. Just free pawn, take the free pawns. h3 to avoid checkmate on the back rank. Let's just give this check for the winning of the f2 pawn. Now white will 100%. Okay. I mean, oh yeah, I was actually about to blunder back rank maybe. Don't do that. But you just have to kind of defend against that threat. There's not much else white can do here. But it is kind of tricky here because back rank mate is hanging. So I think the best way is just to give up the pawn, to be honest, because it's just a pawn. I mean, you're up to pawns in exchange. It's not that deep. So just go here. And the idea is that if white takes any of these ways, you have rook 8 e1, I think is the correct way to put it. And there's just no checkmate here for white because you have king e7 always, and mate is threatened here. I'm not even sure actually how white can defend this checkmate. Presumably through resigning. If you don't want to get checkmated, just resign, I guess. Yeah, and I guess that is one way to prevent it, but not for long. I don't think... Actually, wait, I might not have direct checkmate here. Yeah, I don't think I do. But there's probably something really close here. Like if I go, for example, rook b2, then now suddenly these lines are opened and checkmate is again threatened. I think you have to give up material at this point. Yeah, that just... Yeah. Yeah. And nice kind of ladder mate, except I can prove that. Wait, actually I shouldn't, because they can go... No, if they go bishop here, then my pre-move will be cancelled. So, yeah. And this just shows you that, like, 2100s aren't that crazy. They're just... look intimidating. That's why you should play on Zen mode. Because sometimes Lichess throws at you these high-rated players, and you'll find out that if you just play without thinking about their rating, you'll find that you might even draw or win against them sometimes. Because that's how much rating affects you. And with that advice, I just checked my opponent's rating for no reason. But Sloan Navon, who is 2014, I always check their bullet, by the way. They don't have a bullet, so I guess maybe we should try to play a longer game and maybe get in a time scramble, which might be entertaining. I don't know. So maybe I'll have another Italian. Or not, I don't know. Please, Italian? Okay, so we have a knight of 3, not an Italian, but... Wait. What? We have a knight of 3, not an Italian. We have a Scotch, yeah. I mean, Scotch is, I don't want to hate on Scotch, but... So usually, I know there's a different variation that you play. But, like, online, I usually just like to trade off all the pieces, I mean. I actually played this 5 times in 3+ year Blitz, and I kind of lost all the games, but I keep on playing it because there's nothing objectively wrong with it, probably. And so we get this odd move. Maybe this person just plays c3, always in the Scotch. This is a sign that this person is kind of not great at openings, because, I mean, c3 is a decent move, but that's not the thing you should be doing there. You should try to be developing and defending your queen at the same time. So, anyway, I used to be a kind of Alekhine player, which, if you know, is e4, knight f6. So, I prefer, actually, which is weird, I prefer positions with less space. Not prefer, I guess, is the right word, but I enjoy also positions with less space, rather than other people who just can't play with less space. So here we get these random moves. Like, you guys really have to stop making these random moves. Like, are you gonna get back rank mated like 50 years in the future? Why are you scared of that? There's nothing to be scared of. Just play. And when you do this, suddenly now I get some initiative, which is not really existent. But you get my point. You can't just wasted a move here. Or tempo, if you want to put it professionally. And actually here, if I had my rooks doubled, I would be able to take here, because after takes, this rook would be hanging. But sadly, my rooks aren't doubled. But maybe, you know, I can get c6 in similar tactic. I don't know, something like that. But who knows? So our opponent is thinking, and if I know 2000s right, or like any player that is near 2000, okay. Again, you guys have to stop playing these weird moves. Like, what is this? You're not some world champion, okay? This is just weird. What are you attacking? And don't tell me you're trying to do a minority attack, because I know you aren't. I know that, like, you don't even know how to do it. So, like, don't even try to do that, because you won't accomplish anything. And, in fact, you just get in a position where you're doing absolutely nothing. So now I want to put more pressure on the pawn. And there are a few ways of doing this, but I think probably the best way is to try to get my rook in a more active position to start off, because just to, in any case, just prevent these kind of b5 random pushes. And then probably I'll try to reroute my bishop. Okay, I don't even have to reroute my bishop, because I just get a direct path onto c6. And you could argue that the d6 pawn is weak, but genuinely I don't even care, because I'm just going to win a pawn. You don't have to worry about all this pawn structure stuff when you're just up material, because, yeah. Oh my god, did I blunder? Okay, well, I guess I blundered, which is, like, kind of sad. Well, I guess good job to our opponent. And we lose 3 elo, which is, yeah, sad. Every time I lose the next game, I just try to go for a really quick win and play some really weird openings, which you'll see shortly. If we get C5 or... Okay, bro. Not the... Why the French, though? Why? Okay, I'm just gonna play the Tarrasch, I guess. I'm not saying the Tarrasch is weird. I'm just saying that the Tarrasch is weird. Yeah. Okay. I think the typical theory here is that you take... I'm probably messing it up, but... Remember, in the Tarrasch, you can do, like, anything that is a developing move or a pawn capture, and you'll be fine. Like, this is 100% fine. Just bishop c4, next move, I think, yeah. And then we're 100% on track. Wait, don't pre-move that, don't pre-move that. I randomly pre-move random moves for no reason. Sometimes they work out 90%, but when you're in I'm just accustomed to bullets, so when you're in a rapid game, don't pre-move because there's absolutely no reason to. We have a 2013 Primus 1999, whose bullet is non-existent. It's similar to that other person, who I don't remember the name of. So I think typical Tarrasch theory suggests to play well. I don't know. This is definitely 100% wrong, but as I said, I'm just gonna play weird openings. Because that, like, 50% of the time, or 50+% of the time works. And I always do it when I lose, because I just don't want to tilt. And let's just go for, like, rapid development here. And the Tarrasch is just a ultra solid opening, so you can't really do anything here. Well, usually if you play the Tarrasch right, actually you get an attack, but yeah, I completely didn't play right. So your opponent's thinking. We're up about a minute on time, so we can slow down a bit. We have a nice pin here, and my idea here is that we get to trade pieces, and surprisingly, like, if you can play the endgame like decently well, you'll be surprised how many games you can just win like this, because anybody roughly 2000 doesn't know how to play the endgames at all, 100%. Okay, of course there are exclusions, but I'm talking about the majority. Barely anybody knows how to play endgames correctly. And I'll prove to you that if this guy's not an exception, obviously, we're going to be able to win this endgame without effort. Yeah, and I think that's a bad start. But my idea is that after we hit g5 and we force a weakening, that might be a loft, but that's also a weakness because it's a target in the endgame in the future, which we'll probably maybe not see. So we have bishop e7. Retreating move. So let's go just typical developing. I mean, there's nothing, not rocket science here. Just develop other pieces if you're a beginner or even advanced level. When you don't know what to do and you don't have all your pieces developed, develop your pieces. Okay, maybe bishop f4 was a bit suboptimal because now black potentially has e5, which gains a tempo on the bishop. And another point is that now the light squared bishop gets activated. But as I said, these people have no idea how to play endgames, and not only do they not play e5, they just completely disable the possibility of e5. And I'm happy and to kind of get a trade here because it helps my pieces develop, and we get further into an endgame. And notice, all my pieces are developed and healthy, but this bishop here still has some decisions to sort out. because when you develop it to b7, there's another issue because there'll be a fork on e7 with the rook. Right now, probably the best move is knight d6, because after you get the trade of these pieces, kind of black's better bishop is traded off. And you might say, but why? Because after bishop b7, this bishop is relatively strong. But think about this. The bishop looks strong, but is it really doing anything? It's staring at this pawn. Amazing. But it's not doing much, rather than just stay there and look cool. So, anyway, knight d6 is probably the best move. But I'll just go knight c3, because I kind of want to be a bit more greedy here. And I want to go knight b5 and potentially get my knight even stronger on c7. And as a general rule of thumb, remember, the further your knight goes down the board, the stronger it gets. Of course, there are exceptions, like where I just blunder that, which is sad. Okay, how do I blunder twice in a row? Well, I guess we kind of blundered. Can we make a comeback? Let's see if we can make a comeback, because here it's possible to make a comeback because, I mean, our pieces are more active here, and generally, even though we're in exchange down, black's pieces aren't that great. Okay, they are relatively okay, but they're still not amazing because there's a rook on a8, which is kind of just sleeping. The rook on f8 is also sleeping. So the best move here for black subjectively, or would be objectively, I don't know, would be rook f e8, because this either forces a trade of rooks, or after white moves, now you just got a free rook activated. But in this case, black just put in the worst moves, which is bishop d5, which number one completely just disallows rook e8 ever. Number two, this knight is now solidly put. Yeah, it's just not good, because as you'll see here, black is just creating way too many weaknesses. Now, after f5, I imagine black's purpose here is to try to get the bishop away from defending the knight, but they kind of just helped us here, because after h3, imagine h5, then we have h3, the bishop is just good and well here, and if they go f5, in fact, our bishop is even better, because on e5, it cannot be disturbed ever. So notice how these kind of attacking moves, as you'll see, will make your position worse rather than better. So here, bishop e5 looks appetizing, but it can just be hit with f6. So instead, let's go for c4. And now, as you'll notice, this bishop is now getting just kicked around the place. It's having problems. And as you'll see, my knight is now extremely strong. As I said, it gets stronger as it goes further down the board. I would say arguably a bit less stronger after the 7th rank. But notice this, my knight is doing a great job of not allowing rook c8 or rook e8. So now this bishop is actually almost trapped, basically. And it's kind of just getting kicked around, and my pieces are now much, much more active. Actually, here, I was just saying f6, because there's not f6 since the pawn is pinned here. Notice that. But there is f6 in the future, so I'm not going to do that anyway. So now it's a bit hard to try to find a way to continue. What you kind of have to do is keep a grasp on the position in a way that black can escape here. So think about what pieces we can improve here. Our bishop is great. our knight is great, and our rook is also great. So when we can't improve our pieces that much, of course, bishop b5, as I said, king moves, and f6 comes, which is not what we want. We kind of have to get the pawns in a position where black just doesn't have space here. And even though material may seem objective, it's technically subjective, because all that matters is how much squares your pieces control. Technically, this knight, it's just outperforming this rook right now, because it's controlling way more squares than the rook. So it's kind of subjective technically, and we kind of over rely on materials sometimes. And here I can actually probably fight for an advantage, since this bishop is not doing anything, and they're doing this with the pawns, which isn't even close to okay. So now, if we go rook b7 and try to be a bit greedy, there is rook b8, either rook to b8. Well, actually not either rook. This rook is tied down, also notice that. So we can go rook b7, but there is this rook to b8. There might be some tactics here, which I'll have to calculate. In fact, let's just calculate them, because notice that this bishop is on the diagonal of the rook. So let's think about something like rook b7, rook b8. Now, is there any way we can sacrifice the rook with a check? Or actually, maybe just knight f5 here. So just calculate it in your head. Rook b7, rook b8, knight f5, which is kind of a tough move to see, but the bishop opens up, and after captures, after pawn captures knight, my arrows aren't working. After pawn captures knight, we can simply take the rook on b8, and we actually win back our material with these pawns hanging. And we lose a lot of our grasp on the position, but we just turn, we cash in our advantage. And I feel like I'm just gonna lose that, but technically I'll be winning, but I'll just somehow mess it up, because yeah, that's just somehow how I manage to do things. So now rook b8 is practically forced unless you want to go b5, and then your bishop just becomes a mummy. Seeing that black is 2013, we have a decent chance of black not seeing this knight f5 tactic, though it is kind of obvious for a 2000. But what else can you do? Just think about it. Yeah, b5. They do see it. But b5 is just so sad. Now watch this. My knight is just amazing. It simply outperforms the piece. And as we can see here, I just blundered a piece, but we're kind of making a comeback. And it shows you that at any level, really, there's a way to make a comeback. Like how grandmasters play Leela up a piece, yet they still can't win. So, okay, I'm not supporting Never Resign, because Never Resign really only in lower levels. But if you're down an exchange or a pawn, and there's some compensation you have, as long as it's not completely losing, like by a rook and you have no attack or something, you should just play on, to be honest. So we have bishop b6 and bishop b3, and we can see how kind of hopeless our opponent here is here. They can do absolutely nothing because of a grasp on the position. And even, as just to show you, we can literally just walk our king, because the king is the last piece not in the game. And of course, I want the king to have a loft in case we get threatened by this kind of idea. And yes, I did say earlier that you shouldn't kind of play these moves, but I have a point here, because in the near future, it looks like there's some threats here. Bishop d5. So it looks like you're doing amazing now as black. Like, your bishop is kind of activated. But if you think again, objectively, there's really nothing. You can't even push a5 because b5 is hanging. That's how bad it is for black right now. Well, of course, maybe with some tactical things you could push a5, and we do have a5. But still, I mean, you have to give up a pawn, and there might be some tactics from me, in fact. And anyway, even if we have no tactics, this is kind of a more advanced concept for the more advanced people out there. Our c-pawn is worth technically much, much more than this e-pawn. Because here we have a 4-on-3, which in some cases, and with pieces on the board, cancels out kind of. So we have but here, this pawn has nothing to stop it. And it's not like something on c2, it's literally 3 squares away from queening. So it just becomes more powerful here. And in fact, here we have a quick tactic. Knight d6, the knight just hops back casually. And now f7 hangs. So you can't take b4 unless you want to lose f7. And so now you'll see what happens when black tries to get counterplay. And suddenly, not only do we have one pawn which has nothing to block it, we have, which by the way we call a passed pawn. We have 2 pawns. Okay, never mind. As I say 2 pawns, the other one diminishes. But my point stands. We have 2 pawns, which we call connected passed pawns. So, at the fear of talking too much and losing on time, I'm just going to try to play just simple moves, because there's nothing much black can do, as I said many times. In fact, let's just go for the simple push pawn method. C6, and maybe we just move a rook. Actually, maybe it might be a bit more difficult since the bishop defense is diagonal. But the point is that after something like, okay, that's also okay. Nothing to be scared about here, by the way, because black has no sort of checkmate here. And even if they take the pawn, again, a more advanced concept, the c-pawn is really strong. It's just, that's why black doesn't take it immediately. They probably will on the next move. And, wait, my king might be a bit, wait, I might be mated. Oh, wait. No, wait. Never mind. My knight can go back. I'm still okay. Okay. That was a close call, but we are still fine. Well, not really fine. Okay, yeah, there might be some issues here. Never mind. I was a bit too ambitious with saying that this was kind of fine. Yeah. But since we are up a bit on time, we can probably still win this game. And notice here, as the pieces get traded off more and more, this pawn becomes even harder for black to deal with. And it becomes to the point that now this bishop gets into the game. And black can't even take some of these pawns because my pawn will simply queen. So after we push, the threat of going, so now black can't even take the pawn, notice that. And now, the simple threat of queening makes black sacrifice his rook. And the one thing to remember when playing bullet games, when you're up time, like 30 seconds, is that do not trade all of your pieces. Keep all the pieces on the board that you can. Because, firstly, if you trade off, as I covered before, it's much easier to play with the person with less time. Secondly, if you trade off to a position where you cannot checkmate your opponent, it is draw when they lose on time, not a win. It's a really sometimes annoying, sometimes good rule in chess. Like subjectively, stalemate might be good for some people, and for the player who stalemated, possibly not. But look here, now black will completely malfunction because There's just... Okay, well, that was like really stupid. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't great. So, we land on a really bad number. Let's go for one more game. And let's see how we do. Or actually, let's end off with the bullet game. Or maybe we'll play one more rapid game. Who knows? So let me just display some of the techniques I talked about in our rapid games that I played during the stream. Typically in bullet, again, what I like to do, I'm really bad at time scrambles, as you saw. Like, I just, for some reason, decided to play... I just three-folded, which was so bad. And I'm so sad about that, but it's not much you can do. And what I'd like to do is that I just like to gain a massive advantage. And obviously, this will come with skill more. Bullet is more about not grinding, but more about how well you can play chess. Because the better you play, technically, it just makes a lot of sense too, right? The better you play, the higher your elo will be. Obviously, you can just, like, grind to the point that, like, your elo doesn't even matter, and it's just your speed skills, which is kind of what I've been doing, not gonna lie. But speed is kind of important, and as we see here, this is a 2100 bullet player, probably. I don't know, I'm too lazy to check. Yeah, 2069, basically 2100. Not even close, but they're down 10 seconds on time, or not more than 10 seconds. And so now we'll see my hopefully great application of the concepts we talked about. Don't trade pieces. Don't blunder silly things. And okay, blundering a rook is fine. I mean, it's just an exchange. In bullet, the main thing is speed, not anything else, basically. There we go. Easy bullet win for my ego to go up again. And we're going to play one more rapid game before we end off the stream. So, obviously, if you enjoyed, you can check out my other episodes, or I'll usually do a stream every alternate day. We get an Italian. We got a lot of Italians, in fact. This is the third Italian we got. Or the fourth Italian? I don't know. Again, d3. And now this is kind of a mini lesson. So when your opponent plays garbage stuff, I understand that it's actually extremely hard to disprove it. And usually people just say, oh, just go attack your opponent and somehow things will work out. Well, as we all know here, at least I know all of you have played a garbage opponent once. It's not easy to do that because there's just simply no simple solution to these kind of things. But again, I will say the same thing those people say. Just attack. Just blatantly go attack. Because when your opponent starts doing random things like this, just don't think about anything else. Just attack. Because now their pieces, it makes sense too. You just have to think about it from a logical standpoint. Well, we just won a pawn here, but usually we don't win a pawn. From a logical standpoint, your opponent's pieces are less active. And your opponent is doing whatever this is. I don't know what this is, yeah. Your opponent's pieces are less active, meaning that they can't get in the game more easily. And I say this for any type of position. The Italian is obviously a more closed game, and there are more opportunities where you get close positions where you can attack better. That's just the nature of close positions, because black's pieces cannot. Again, from a logical standpoint, black's pieces cannot get into the game that well. And similarly, for garbage openings. They play these weird piece development schemes, and their pieces can't get in the game optimally. And it's not really hard. You just have to not think and just attack. Like, you have to forget all your positional fears. That's all you have to do. And we did that, and look at what happened. We just are up, how much? 3 pawns for nothing. And in fact, well, not gonna lie, this opponent is probably a bit more garbage than what you'll usually get. But not gonna lie, we're just completely winning. Because we can trade here, but after the trade of queens, it's just dead loss for black. And black, in this game, especially, has not been doing much to actually prevent this downfall from happening. And now, if this person, no offense, is not a staller, they'll probably resign, because I just want to take a moment to acknowledge whatever this position is. There's just a pawn on g7. Okay, so weird. Okay, is our opponent gonna stall? 1931. Not gonna lie, 1931 person, please play the Italian the right way. Like, when you do this, this kind of thing happens. And now simply, okay, so our opponent is not a staller. There's nothing scary about this. There's literally nothing scary. In fact, you don't even have to take the bishop. As I'll show you, you can just... Okay, well, I guess here. Well, if you're feeling a bit feisty, you can not even take that. Actually, I am feeling feisty, you know? What? Because after black takes on b2, the bishop is trapped. Which is really lucky, but this is the kind of thing that happens when you do this. And now, we have this position, which is like... I'm not even sure if you can call this a position. Look at the material counter. Just 5 pawns up. Pin. Rook g6, completely dead. Not possible. And now all you have to do is literally just develop your pieces. Just bring the king to a safer spot, if you even have to, which in this case it's not really necessary. Now after king g7, I would argue that technically black's king is in kind of a worse spot than white's king, because you have whatever, I mean, because my pieces are just flowing much better. Well, flowing is not like a very accurate word, but you know what I mean. My pieces have more activity, and basically black's pieces can't do anything because they're stuck defending this path pawns. And literally I can just play all my moves in 1 second or less. Just knight b5, king f1. Okay, it's just my mouse speed. Is that why I'm playing so slow? But you know. And check, actually. I didn't even see that was a check. But queen c7. And what you gotta do is that you gotta like shove a queen trade into your opponent's face. And usually there are many opportunities to do this. Just shove the queen in such a way they're forced to trade off. As we'll see here, queen e8, we just shove queen e7 in their face. Okay, we don't get that. And now, don't be this kind of person who worries about that pawn. That pawn means nothing to you. Right now, all that you have to worry about is your king and just rook g1. And trade off all the pieces, black has nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So bishop b3, rook g1. Force trade. Force the trades into their face. Okay, not physically. I am not responsible for any harmful things you do to other people by learning stuff in this video. So you can't blame me if you just like shove chess pieces into your opponent's face, but on the chessboard you can shove chess pieces into your opponent's face. That is legal. I don't know why, but... And now for some reason they trade more, which is maybe just a result of tilting. And it's probably not, maybe. So here, the only thing you have to be careful about is getting checkmated, which is kind of easy to be checkmated. But all you have to do is just move your king. Your king is just... Wait. Did I mess this up? Okay, this might be kind of sad. I might have messed this up. How do I keep on messing this up? Why am I... Okay. Wait, no, wait. I'm stupid. We can just... I'm very scared there's some sort of mate here. We're going for it. Queen F3. Okay, well, I said there was going to be one game, but since I went below 2,000, I have to play another one. And as I said earlier, we are just going to play the worst opening known to mankind. Oh my god. Why Caro-Kann? Why? Why do you have to do this to me? Why Caro-Kann? I wanted an e4, e5 for once. What is this? Okay, never mind. What? This is another, like, what? And I'll show you how to deal with this too. Again, just don't care about anything. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you all don't know this, but the last game I didn't lose because of the strategy. The last game I lost because my skill. And now you literally have the same position as if you played a 2-move Caro-Kann, except I just get, let me just count, 1, 2, 3 extra moves. And I'm so, like, I'm so okay that I can just literally do this. Like, Queen H4 means nothing to me. Well, no, I just hung pawn. Okay, that was sad. But, trust me, that was a sacrifice. Okay, I didn't hang the pawn. Even though I just sacrificed the pawn. Just to show you that you can sacrifice material even here, and you can win the game. Okay, a small disclaimer. By win, I mean a winning position. I don't mean like winning the game, because if you weren't here, I just blundered a rook, blundered mate, and blundered an exchange. So, yeah. And blundered pawn. Well, no, that was a sacrifice. Actually, no blunder. Queen H4, again, nothing scary. Can't fun. And now see, we just have so much development. While black has developed a knight, black in total has developed a knight, undeveloped the knight, developed the bishop, and then undeveloped the bishop, and then just moved the queen, the bishop got like 5 moves in a row, and then finally the knight comes out 5 years later. This is like, why do you guys play chess like this? Like, what? Why? Now, please, knight g3. Okay, as a 2000, or 1983, this should be easy to see. Knight g3, king g2, and the knight is actually pinned, which is a big factor. So now, queen g6, and again, it looks scary, but objectively, this move does absolutely nothing. And so, I can just, like, I can just do this, because what's black gonna do at worst? Gonna trade their only active piece. They moved the bishop for 5 moves, traded that off. Now, they could technically move a knight for 3 moves and then trade that off. They're just trading all their good pieces off. So here, should I go for a queen trade? This is a big question here, and it's kind of confusing in this position. So to answer your question, I think it is good. Technically, as, wait, actually, you know what? Since I said I'm going to go crazy, I'm actually going to go crazy. I'm just going to, bam, do whatever this is. Yeah, that is not a good move. But, you know, I said that I wanted a quick win, and we are going to get a quick win with this weird sacrifice. And we actually tricked our opponent. So, as some random chess grandmaster said, which I don't remember, the best way to refute a sacrifice is accepting it, which they just don't do for some reason. And okay, that was probably the best way of refuting it, but no, never mind. Wait, do I have Queen F3? You know what? We're gonna double down on the sacrifice. We're just gonna double down. This is completely acceptable and probably like -2 when you accept this, yeah. But like, I don't really care at this point. Actually, it might not. You probably have to analyze this with the engine because the queen can't go back because the knight is hanging. But the king probably has to go here. This is kind of a Halloween Gambit style thing. There is also castles, but I don't really consider this move because it just doesn't matter. Subjectively, I think is the right word. Looks kind of weird. And now the queen has to defend the knight. Actually, I think that's just a blunder. And see, this is, again, what happens because... Okay, but imagine this was a blunder, which it might be, it might not be. I'll have to calculate. But there's always hope in these kind of positions because everybody blunders. Like even Magnus Carlsen blundered the queen against... blundered a queen against Wesley Slow. Wesley Slow? Maybe he is Wesley Slow, but wait. No, maybe he is slow. He's not Wesley Slow, but he's slow, maybe. I don't know. Against Wesley So. And he won that game, I think. Or it's against Hikaru. I don't remember. But you get my point. Blunders can happen. And in this case, I don't think it was a blunder by my opponent. No, it actually was. Wait, they blundered so badly. They just blundered mate. There's just mate. They just completely missed it. And see, this is the kind of thing that, like, even top grandmasters and stuff can do this stuff. Top grandmasters and stuff can do this stuff? I don't know. Yeah, only move. Now, don't go fancy and play Queen F6. That is the last thing that you have to avoid here. If you play Queen F6, after Bishop G1, if you calculate King G1, your queen actually hangs. So it'd be like insanely disappointing if you actually blundered that. But here you can be fancy here. Because you weren't fancy there, you just need compensation for not being fancy. That's just how chess works. So king takes. There is. So for some reason our opponent also tries to be fancy. But fancy doesn't work here because my pawn isn't even remotely threatened. There's check. And now my pawn is just like secure in this position. So Queen G5, or even if they take King F2, with the idea that I can bring my rook over. That's a more advanced idea, obviously, but our opponent just seems to also not be very advanced because they just hang a fork. Fork? Yeah, they're just fork. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm saying. Queen D7. Queen B7 is hanging. Knight is hanging. And again, our king is not in any danger. Rather, black's king is in danger. It's just like a traitor among black's ranks here. Just a random white pawn that's trying to be a black pawn. Just a spy kind of thing. But seriously, we call this concept an umbrella pawn. So this is a serious kind of degrading thing to the umbrella pawn. Like, no offense, this person just, like, completely misheard the person who was explaining the umbrella pawn. Because usually umbrella pawns are when you can't take the pawn, or it's better not to take the pawn. But like, there's nothing even remotely wrong with not taking the pawn. So I'm not sure why they're just, because listen, if you can just take the pawn, just do it, unless it's like completely losing for some reason. There's no need to be fancy. Like, I'm just not gonna be fancy. Just rook d1, we're just gonna take all the trades we can and then get out of there. And finally, after 5 millennia, they take the pawn. But like, way too late. And now, again, I'm not just being fancy, because I'm not being fancy. I'm just taking all the pawns I can, and now I'm just gonna subtly just get out of this position, and we're gonna go with c4 to bam, expose pin. New concept, I guess. Here you have to be careful, because a lot of people, I imagine, will blunder. Well, not exactly blunder, not even remotely a blunder, but if you go king g2, you have to be careful of knight e3. In this case, it's not losing, because you don't lose that much material, you don't lose your queen, and you're just up 2 pawns. So just go king g1 anyway. Don't be fancy, as I said. Just win the rook. Or win all you can, basically. Just be a humble person. Kind of thing. Okay, so that was a complete mouse slip. But I meant king... Oh. Okay, so that was also a complete mouse slip. But king h2, they're both fine here. And black is just kind of stalling this thing. But there's nothing that black can technically do. And if this person is a veteran, they will obviously just resign. But I don't expect these people to resign, because for some reason these people go by the philosophy never resign, which is kind of stupid unless you're low rated. So black's knight is threatened here, and they're basically forced to move it, is the kind of thing that's going on. And this all stemmed from... Okay, there were some bad moments here. Maybe this position was -1. But this all stemmed from the weirdest Caro-Kann ever. We just had knight f6, knight g8, bishop f5, bishop c8. Like, I'm just going to say you can't do this stuff. So we just take the free rook. Don't take the knight, because the rook is hanging. Just as a small note, if you try to be fancy. And now we just win the game. And the easiest way is, in this position, the king is very weak. So directly just ignore all the, oh, you have to trade your pieces and then promote the pawn rules. Just check, win the knight, just destroy. Is the kind of thing you have to be thinking here, rather than the methodical approach. And actually, I can even just pre-move this move, which is probably this is a horrible idea, not recommended at all. But okay, it worked out this time. Just go for the king, and we get a resignation. So thank you, all viewers and ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, I have a playlist on my channel, and I do streaming here, usually. I've started. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. So, bye.